Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put the link in the chat one more time. Thank you so much for coming tonight. I'm really excited to share with you guys my presentation on how we can use Wixie so littles can create. And so, like I said, that is the link. So I would love to get a little bit of information about who's here. So if you could go ahead and tell me your name, your position, and where you're from in the chat really quick, that'd be awesome. It's one from Fairfax County, yay! Glenda, where do you teach in Fairfax County?
I'm at Laurel Hill Elementary.
Okay, I'm at Sangster, so.
Oh, wow, my kids went to Sangster.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So as you guys are finishing putting that in, just to give you guys a little bit of information about me, this is my 21st year in education. I've been a tech coach in Fairfax County, Virginia for about 3 years. I also blog on Tannenbaum Tech, and in addition to doing a lot of other publications where I guest blog. You can find me pretty much anywhere on Tannenbaum Tech except Facebook. I'm also on Clubhouse now. I've joined that weird cult. And I have a book coming out this spring called Transform Techie Notes to Make Learning Sticky by Road to Awesome's publishing it. So I'm really excited about that. So we're going to go ahead and do 3 things in this next half hour. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about promoting student agency. Then we're really going to talk about some ideas for Wixie to create. And then we're going to kind of brainstorm and share some ideas to try tomorrow. And please feel free to, put any questions in the chat. I am happy to answer them as we go. So really important for our students to become creators, we need to make sure we're promoting student agency. So we have to really think about that. I don't know about you, but when I first started working with littles, I felt like I was playing whack-a-mole. I would help one kid and another kid would pop up, and I'd help another kid and another kid would pop up, and it was exhausting. So while I was dealing with all of this, I was listening to a podcast, the 10-Minute Teacher podcast, and Pana, who's on the screen, who I'm going to show you a brief clip on, she was talking about how her kindergartners were really struggling with using iPads. Hopefully you can hear that.
And I currently work as the pre-K to 1 technology and design coach at Taipei American School. Before this, I worked in early childhood classrooms. So early childhood really is my life. I love working with young children, and I love the developmental stage as well. Now, from my perspective, early childhood teachers are very, very good at figuring out the building blocks behind different concepts and learning so that they can teach these little building blocks in chunks to our youngest, to the youngest members of our school community. So when I shifted from being an early childhood classroom teacher to being a technology and design coach, I had lots of ideas. And I see this with teachers all around the world. They get new technology, they get really excited about, oh, I can use the iPad to make videos, I can get my kids to draw, they can record their voices, and we get really tied up in the product of what our students could possibly create. But what I started to notice after a year or 2 of being in my new role was that no matter how carefully I thought I had introduced the instructions to a new app or a tool, or how well I might have created an anchor chart with all the steps for the procedure, I always had students constantly asking me, Miss A, what do I do next? And I had iPads being shoved in front of my face. They couldn't really hold the steps in their heads.
So with that idea of holding the steps in their heads, she talked a lot about how she taught her kids using icons. And all of a sudden, this became something that really was empowering to me. And so I started off at the very top where I would go over my icons with my students, and they would know, for example, on the top, my kindergartners called this the Google circle, but we would go over the steps on how to go to Google Classroom, and we would use those icons. And it was working really well. And I was noticing that instead of asking me as many questions, my kindergartners, I could point them to the board, or one of them would point each other to the board, and they started to do a little bit better. So all of a sudden I started to see all these icons, and I got really excited about them. And that kind of led to this chart on the bottom. This became my icon word wall. Now, it was really great. And I was using this primarily for my K-1 kids. And all of a sudden my 5th graders started to notice that what I was adding. And not only were they noticing, but they wanted those things in theirs too. So it wasn't just something that was benefiting my little ones. It was actually something that was benefiting all of my students. So one of the things that I love about Wixie is that you guys in the icon library have included all of the icons. So this makes this super easy. So if we want to teach our students how to make things in Wixie, we have all of those icons easily at our disposal. We don't have to worry about finding them on Google or cropping them with some sort of sharing thing. They're all right there, which is super great. So that makes it a lot easier as we start working with our students, excuse me. So as this continued, the second year I did this, I was finding I had less and less time. And as a technology coach, I work with the K-3 students in the master schedule as part of their specials. I'd have a half an hour and then they'd have to switch to somebody else. It was super tight. And the school I was at this past year, which I'm still at now, they were really big on learning targets. So I started noticing that I could put these icons as part of my learning targets. Now, my kindergartners were still struggling a little bit. So I noticed that if I went over with them that this was a username and that this was a password, they started to do better. And I'd be like, username, and they'd hold it up. And I'd be like, how many numbers? And then they go 7. I go password. They hold it up. And so we started adding some signs in. The other thing we did as we progressed into this is that we went from going where we more had a morning message to more of an algorithm, more of a step-by-step process. So my students would know, they go to Google Chrome, they go to first grade technology in this example, they knew how to click in each of these steps, and they knew that these were the tools they were going to be using. So really powerful tools that we're able to give them. So one of the things that I started to notice is whether or not I was rescuing my students or whether I was conveying that the answer was within them. And one of these realizations came to me while I was going to a Project Zero workshop. And so I started to think about that. Am I giving them agency or am I rescuing them? And so sometimes those charts that I just showed you, they originally were on the board, but I found that in my classroom, they actually needed to be around my room so I could easily point, or a kid next to them could point and kind of help them, so to promote that independence. I also noticed that video was really becoming key. Now, this was before Wixie had a video. That is definitely one of my favorite Wixie improvements. So excited it's there. But now we can even add video instructions to our assignments. Back then, I would have to record a video elsewhere and then have them refer to it. But really great that we have that capability as we're working. I have definitely used the directions where I've recorded the directions, but obviously that video is going to give them even more. So, any questions about that before we move on? I want to make sure I get to share with you as much as possible. Linda?
So how do we get a copy of your little icons, cheat sheets things?
The icon cheat sheets, which ones do you mean?
Like the password, username and your little computer.
Well, you're going to get, I have given you guys a copy of the presentation, so.
Okay.
If you haven't, I'll put it in the chat again. And I'm more than happy, since you're right down the road, let me know and we can figure out a way to,
Awesome.
you know.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, great. So one of the things that I truly believe is for our students to become creators, we have to give them the freedom to get messy. I joke that January is my favorite time of year with my kindergartners, because I don't know what it's like anywhere else, but it takes, before we were one-to-one, and now we are one-to-one, but before we were one-to-one, seeing kids for a half an hour a week in kindergarten, it would take us about a month for them to be able to log in, maybe longer. Then it would take us a while for them to get to Google Classroom. Then they'd have to learn how to click on a website. Like we scaffold the processes one at a time. And so by January, they're finally ready. And so one of the things that I thought that was really important to me was I wanted them to learn how to be creators. And knowing how the knowing the easy user interface that Wixie has, I felt like it was a great place for them to start. So the first thing I always start, and if you use these, all of these actually are hyperlinks. So if you click on any of them, I believe you should still be able to get into it. Is that correct, Tiffany?
I'm sorry,
If they click on my hyperlinks and they log into Wixie, can they get into can they use that template?
Yes, absolutely. So what they will do is they'll log into their account, and then they'll click the file menu, and then they can save it to their account.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah.
So the first thing I always start my kindergartners with is the snow globe. I picked the snow globe for a couple of different reasons. One, you can use your imagination and pretty much put anything inside of a snow globe. Two, I love the fact that it gives them opportunities to do a lot of different skills. So that very first week, all I do with them is we take 3 pieces of 3 stickers, and they learn how to put 3 stickers in, 2 or 3 stickers. That's the first thing they learn to do. They learn how to click that image. We put the word snow up on the board, or if they're looking for another word, we help them with that, and they add their images. Once they've done that, the next week they come back, and then we start really exploring that paint can. So we talk about how to use the paint can to color things in. And boy, do they enjoy that. And then finally, we spend some time talking about text. What text can we add in to describe our snow globe? And knowing that we have our instructional assistants in there to provide some support as well. So they end up with some really cool snow globes at the end. So that's kind of where I start them. And then from there, at that point, they usually have the basic skills they need. And some of them in the past, when we've done this, have added their voice. Now, if we wanted to, we could even add the video. We did not have the video last year when we did this. So another example with kindergarten, and I'm going to share with you a bunch of examples. Like I said, they're all hyperlinked. Kindergarten learns about shadows in our county. And so one of the things that we had the students do was we had them fill in this picture of the park. Just like the snow globe, there's a lot of directions they can go. I heavily believe in that voice and choice. So I try to give kids prompts that are open enough that they have more than one direction to go in, but also can't let them go too far. And so the kids would draw their picture, or they'd add their stickers. And then they'd have to we talk about, well, where's our sun? Where would the shadow be, depending on where our sun is? And boy, did they love that. And they also loved knowing as they were playing, they could make their lines a little bit bigger. So they didn't have to color their shadows in with the tiny pens. This is another example. This is a math example. One of the things that I love about Wixie is the cloning ability. I would say it's probably my favorite feature. And so in this one, the kids get a chance to create a coin caterpillar. And what they do is they get to drag their coins up to create that caterpillar. And then they get to write down how many of each coin they have. And for my advanced kids, they could even tell me how much it is. I'm assuming everyone who's in here knows about the cloning. If you need me to explain that, let me know. Okay, awesome.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. So I don't know what that is. If you could.
Okay, then.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure. So right now I am in Wixie, And that if you click on a picture and you go to edit and you go to properties, there's a feature called clone. So edit, properties, and clone. And when you do this, I can grab as many of these as I want.
Oh, cool. Okay, so it's kind of like duplicate, but a little different.
But you don't have to continue to do it. It automatically does it for you. So the kids can then take all of these and create their caterpillar.
Thank you. Cool.
So they really enjoy that. And cloning is definitely one of my favorite features. Awesome. Okay. Here's another example. This is a forces activity. And in this forces activity, the students had read an article on PebbleGo, which is a kid-friendly database about forces, and they had to draw a picture. This is not a student picture. This is one of mine. This is my sample picture. But one of the things, like I've been talking about, every kid drew a different picture. Somebody drew somebody shooting a basketball. Somebody drew somebody, pushing a wagon. Like I did, we did the pushing the wagon. Everybody picked something different. And yet they all were able to share. Now, this was also before Wixie had video. So what we did with my grade 1 students is we showed them how to download their pictures, and then we put them in Flipgrid, and we no longer have to do that. Thank you. So, then they were able to bring that in, but it would be just as easy to take this and have them pop their video in and explain what they drew. Other things that I really love doing, this is something I do with both grades 1 and 2. I love the fact that you can have multiple pages. I think that's really great. It's funny because when I first started using Wixie, I have to be honest, I really didn't get it. And I'm a Google girl. And one of my students was like, when we were working in Google Slides, like, this is just like Wixie. And I started playing with it, and I met somebody who was really good at it in my county and started playing. And now I'm like, I always use Wixie with my, especially my K-2s. But in this one, the kids are able to write a story telling what they did at certain times. In this one, they can draw the hands on the clock as they go along. And they can type directly in here and add an illustration. And so the kids really, really, really enjoy that. They love to tell stories about what they're doing. Another one using that cloning ability. This is a shapes collage for grades 1 and 2. Just like the coin caterpillar, this one has the students create a collage using them. Nice part about this, just like many of these projects, is if you wanted, you could also then put them into a class book. The kids really enjoy that whole creative process. Everybody starts with the same thing, but we can end up with very, very different things. And if I'm going too fast, let me know. I just want to share as much goodness as I can. So please feel free to let me know if I'm going too fast. This one I can't take credit for. I found somewhere else, but I brought it into Wixie. So I'm going to open it just so you can see what it is. This is actually modeled after Shake Up Learning, Winter Poetry, and she does it in Google Slides. But I wanted my students to be able to do it in Wixie. So basically all of these are saved as images where you can create your own poems. So, just move things up. So that is definitely one of the ways that you can use that. And the kids really enjoy that. So this is my favorite one of all. This is, out of all the things I do in Wixie, this is my favorite project. So I'm going to open it up because have any of you ever read the Shape of All Things book? Okay. So this is my favorite because I'm going to push it so you can see the story. So basically what this is this one, they start off with 4 shapes. And so it talks about a circle is just a circle until you add. And so they have to add something and show what else a circle can be. We've used this a lot in our GT testing to see if kids have abstract thinking. So I always show them when we get started, well, if I do this, and this. If I add those 3 lines, then what is it? And, as they're working, they're like, oh, wait a minute. I have a basketball here. So they really enjoy that. I have to tell you, a few years ago, one of the kids made that circle into the Google Chrome sign. One of them made it into me, which was a very nice picture. Not exactly what I would have expected, but thank goodness they explained it to me. And so they do the same thing on each of these. They talk about a rectangle is just a rectangle, and they get a chance to take what they see from those shapes and really turn it into something else. And I have to say that this is the one that I see the most creativity on out of all the things that they do. And I actually do this one K-3 because I want to make sure, because it's so interesting to see the differences. So they really, really enjoy this. And I think I actually found this idea off of one of the Wixie blogs originally, if I'm remembering correctly. Any questions? I don't do this with K till the end of the year. But I love doing this. This is like one of my favorite things. And I'm always walking behind them. I'm like, oh my God, this is so good. So just some ideas before we kind of finish up that you can use with your students. Just thinking about ideas to try tomorrow, thinking about, can you teach the icons in Wixie to your students? It's definitely one of the things that I really enjoy about using in Wixie is that all of the pictures are so clear and so easy, and it makes it really nice for the kids. When I first started using this, I just recently noticed about the icons. I also like the way that Wixie formats things and allows things to print. And so at one point, as I was grabbing icons, I put a lot of them in Wixie just because I liked that size, that I could get that half-page size that would print so nicely as well. Some other things to consider, thinking about using that cloning feature. I know in our school, we're using Google Slides a lot, and we're using the interactive slides. And we're putting things in the side. Well, Wixie makes that so much easier for us to use with the cloning. And so there's definitely ways that we can do that, that we might want to consider, especially if we are using the Teams feature so that more than one student can participate. This gives our students the opportunity not to have to go find something, but just drag those things up. Also consider having your kids use the video for audio, using video and audio for creation. I talked a little bit about using it for directions. This is a student who was really interested in fishing and decided to make each page of Wixie into a podcast. At this point, there wasn't video, but he used the audio feature, and every page is a different podcast episode about fishing. So just consider that. I mean, our students can't always write everything. However, they can speak and tell you what they're thinking. So with that, are there any questions? I know I gave you a lot of information in a short amount of time.
So for example, that shape activity, that template, I can get that from your presentation?
Yes. So okay. Yes, you should be able to click on it, and then I think it'll ask you to log in.
Okay,
and then you
cool.
And then I think Tiffany said that you can.
There'll be an option underneath file.
It.
It'll say copy to my projects.
Okay,
absolutely.
Great. Wow, thank you. That is so helpful.
No problem.
Thank you so much, Debbie. This is wonderful.
And I just have one more thing to share, unless there's any other questions. Okay. So just before you leave, please feel free to connect with me. I am very active on social media. Like I said, my book is coming out, and I'm also going to I'm also going to put a link in the chat if you wouldn't mind giving me some feedback on the presentation tonight. I always appreciate feedback, and I'm always trying to learn.
What's the name of your book, Debbie?
Transform Techie Notes to Make Learning Sticky, and it's coming out this spring. I'm in the middle of editing right now. And so some of the things we talked about, the student agency and the nurturing student agency, and some of the stuff for Wixie is talked about in there as well. But it's not just about Wixie. The Wixie is one of my Transform Tech tools.
Okay, I see it down there. The trend, yeah. Techie notes to make learning sticky.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I just want to thank all of you for coming tonight. I know that if you're working as hard as we are, which I'm sure you are, the days are really long, the demands are high, and to take some time to learn a little bit, is really great.